Statistics show that during a robbery, 90% of victims' heart rates jump above 180 beats per minute. They panic, they scream, they beg. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, in a shabby diner in South Boston, Sienna Brooks did none of that. When a shotgun was pointed directly at her forehead, she didn't even blink. She simply asked if they wanted pie to go. That was the coolest thing anyone in the room had ever seen. Watching from the far booth against the wall was the only man dangerous enough to fall in love with it. The fluorescent lights in Miller's Diner buzzed all night with an irritating hum that usually drove new customers crazy. For Sienna Brooks, it was just the soundtrack of her life. It was 2:14 a.m., Tuesday. Rain drummed against the window panes, turning Boston streets into a blurry smear of neon and coal. Sienna adjusted her apron, wiping the coffee pot on the plastic counter. She was 26, but her eyes looked older, tired, detached, lacking the warmth people usually expect from a woman her age. She'd been working at Miller's for 3 years, enough to cover the rent on her studio apartment, and more importantly, it made her invisible. No one looked twice at a waitress in a greasy uniform. Only 3 tables were occupied. In the corner, old man Henderson sipped decaf coffee, dozing with his mouth open. By the window, a young couple argued in hushed, tear-streaked whispers. And in the far booth, number 4, the one with the controversial red vinyl, sat a man who hadn't touched his food. Sienna noticed him the moment he walked in. He wore a suit that cost more than the diner's annual revenue, charcoal grey, tailored with terrifying perfection. Dark hair, eyes the colour of burnt espresso, and he sat with his back to the wall, facing the door. He didn't say a word, just pointed at the menu. Sienna approached with the coffee pot. "Refill?" she asked. The man looked up. His eyes didn't just slide over her, they dissected her. "Black," he said, his voice a low rumble like tires on fresh gravel. "Freshly brewed," Sienna said automatically, pouring the steaming liquid. She noticed the man's hand on the table. No watch, no ring. On the knuckles of his right hand were barely visible white scars. She returned to the counter, glanced at the clock, 2:18. That's when the bell on the door jingled. It wasn't the soft chime of a regular customer. The door was kicked so hard it slammed against the wall, cracking the plaster. Everyone hit the floor. The shout was hoarse, cracked, and desperate. Sienna didn't gasp, didn't drop the coffee pot. She set it on the warmer, flipped the switch to minimum, and turned slowly. 3 men, ski masks, baggy hoodies, soaked from the rain. The one in the middle held a short-barreled revolver that trembled in his hand. The one on the left had a crowbar. The one on the right was the tallest, tweaking on something that made his eyes bulge through the slits in the mask. "I said on the floor, bitch," yelled the middle one with the gun, waving the weapon toward the young guy who was already sobbing on the linoleum. Old man Henderson snorted awake, looking around confused. Sienna leaned her hip against the counter and crossed her arms. "Cash register's open," she said. Her voice was even, monotonous, cutting through the panic in the room like a scalpel. "Take the cash, leave the tip jar, leave our tips." The robber with the gun froze. He blinked, clearly expecting screams. He lunged to the counter, jamming the gun's muzzle into Sienna's face, the metal cold on her cheek, smelling of gun oil and rust. "Think this is a joke?" The robber spat, drool dripping from under the mask. "I'll blow your head off." In the far booth, the man in the charcoal suit stirred, his hands slipping under his jacket. Sienna's eyes flicked to the far booth for a split second. A micro-signal, no need. She looked back at the robber, staring straight into his pupils. "Your safety's on," said Sienna. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The robber frowned, his eyes darting down to the gun. "What?" "Safety," repeated Sienna, sounding bored. "It's a copy, SIG Sauer 229, safety's the lever on the side. If you pull the trigger now, nothing happens. And while you're figuring it out, the cops will be here because I hit the panic button 3 minutes ago when I saw you idiots scoping the parking lot." It was a lie, she hadn't pressed the button, but she said it with such absolute, terrifying conviction that the air left the room. The robber panicked, he looked at the gun, fumbling with the lever. "She's lying," yelled the guy with the crowbar. "Just shoot her." "I can't find it," wailed the robber. Sienna reached under the counter. The 3 men flinched, expecting a weapon. She pulled out a pack of cigarettes and a lighter, lit one, took a deep drag, staring at the gun barrel still aimed at her face. "You've got about 30 seconds, She exhaled smoke to the ceiling. Police station's 2 blocks away, shift change at 2:15, means double the patrol cars on the streets right now. The familiar sound of sirens wailed in the distance. That part was luck, pure luck. Sienna showed no relief. She just raised an eyebrow. "Leave," she commanded. The 3 men bolted, stumbling over each other, cursing, crashing into the doorframe as they fled into the rainy night, leaving the till untouched. Sienna took another drag, walked to the door, closed and locked it, then turned to the waiting couple on the floor. "You okay? Want a free slice of pie?" She went back to the counter to grab the coffee pot, her hand steady, absolutely steady. "I don't have the strength left to be afraid." She tore the check from the pad, slapped it on the counter. $18.50 from you if you don't want dessert." The man stared at her a long, awkward moment, then reached into his jacket. He pulled out a money clip thick with $100 bills, counted off $500, and laid them on the counter. "Keep the change," he said. He turned and walked to the door. Before exiting he paused, hand on the brass handle. "What's your name?" "Sienna." "Sienna." He tasted the word. "I'm Gabriel." "Nice to meet you, Gabriel. Don't come back." He smirked, a dangerous predatory expression that made him look like a wolf in sheep's clothing. "I think I will." He vanished into the rain. Sienna watched after him until his car's taillights faded in the distance. Her legs buckled. She slid down the back wall of the counter, sat on the dirty floor, tucked her head between her knees, and took a shaky breath, clenching her hands together to stop the tremor. She wasn't brave. She was just tired of surviving. Gabriel Santoro didn't drink coffee in diners. He didn't frequent the slums of South Boston, and he certainly didn't let people talk to him the way that Waitress did. Gabriel was the head of the Santoro crime family, an organization that controlled shipping, unions, and big-time gambling from Boston too. He was 32 and had inherited the throne after his father was gunned down in a barbershop 4 years ago. He'd turned the chaotic and bloodthirsty family into a corporate machine. He was calculating, he was deadly, and now he was obsessed. He sat in the back seat of his armored Maybach, watching the city pass by through rain-streaked windows. Next to him sat Rocco, his enforcer, Vic, and oldest friend. Rocco was a slab of muscle with a broken nose and loyalty bordering on religious. "Boss," said Rocco, looking at his tablet, "I ran the plates on the car parked behind the diner. Beat-up Honda Civic, registered to Sienna Brooks, address in." "What else?" asked Gabriel, spinning a silver coin between his fingers. "Here's the weird part." Rocco frowned. "Nothing else. No social media, no credit history before 3 years ago, no college records, like she appeared out of nowhere in 2023. Gabriel stopped spinning the coin. "Ghost or someone in witness protection," speculated Rocco, and his hand instinctively went to his belt. "No," Gabriel shook his head. "Protection program builds a better legend. They give you a history. Sienna Brooks has emptiness. She's hiding." Rocco, but not from the law. Gabriel closed his eyes, replaying the scene in the diner, how she identified the gun. Copious IG Sauer 229. A waitress doesn't know gun models. A waitress doesn't know about double-action triggers. "Dig deeper," ordered Gabriel. "I want to know where she's from, who her father was, why a woman with ice in her veins is serving burnt toast for minimum wage." 3 days later, Sienna lost her job, not for the robbery but because the robbery video went viral. Someone filmed from outside as the robbers fled, and the recording caught Sienna's cool response. The internet dubbed her the Ice Queen waitress. Mr. Miller, the owner, was sweating when he called her into his office. "Sienna, listen," he stammered, wiping his bald head with a handkerchief. "You're great, really. Attention, we have film crews at the door. The insurance company is asking questions about liability. They say you provoke them." "I saved your till," said Sienna, standing at the door, still in her coat. I know, but it's too much noise. Here's 2 weeks' pay." He shoved the envelope. "Please just go." Sienna didn't argue, didn't beg. She took the envelope, exited through the back door, and tossed her apron in the dumpster. It was raining again. It seemed like it always rained in her life. She walked 6 blocks to the subway station, head down, ignoring the news van parked across the street. She needed a new job, fast. Rent was due in 4 days. If she missed payment, the landlord, a slimy type named Frank who tried to touch her shoulder every time he collected cash, would evict her. She reached her building, crumbling brick ruins with a broken intercom, climbed 4 flights to apartment 4B. When she unlocked the door, she froze. The The lock was already open. Sienna didn't scream, didn't run. She reached into her purse, fingers gripping the small pepper spray canister, her only weapon since selling her father's service revolver. She kicked the door open and ducked. "I wouldn't do that," a voice came from her living room. Sienna entered. In her second-hand velvet armchair sat Gabriel Santoro. The room was tiny, just a bed, kitchen nook, and chair, but Gabriel made it seem even smaller. Today he wore a navy suit, no tie. He looked out of place like a diamond in a gutter. Rocco stood at the window, blocking the fire escape. "Breaking and entering," said Sienna, tossing her keys on the counter. She didn't put away the pepper spray. "You mafiosi really don't believe in doorbells." Gabriel smiled, this time a genuine smile. "Forget it. Your lock's a joke, Sienna. You can open it with a hairpin. I'm doing you a favor showing you how unprotected you are." "I was safer until you showed up," she countered. "What do you want?" "I don't have those $500 you left that night. I paid the electric bill." "I don't need money," said Gabriel, standing, moving with feline grace. "I heard you got fired." Sienna tensed. News travels fast. "I own the building Miller rents," Gabriel shrugged. "I called. I told him to fire you." The room's temperature dropped 10 degrees. Sienna's eyes narrowed, fatigue vanished, replaced by sharp, dangerous rage. "You got me fired," she whispered. "Why? Because I didn't melt in front of you at the diner?" "No," said Gabriel calmly, "because you're wasting away there. You have talent, Sienna. You have poise. There's something in you that Miller's diner can't contain." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was black with gold embossing. "Onyx Lounge." "I need a floor manager for my club," said Gabriel. "It's in the upscale district, elite clientele, politicians, celebrities, and my partners. I need someone who can handle rowdy clients, who doesn't flinch when things get complicated." She looked at the card, then at him. "You want me to work for the mafia?" "I want you to work for me," corrected Gabriel. "Salary $3,000 a week, cash, plus bonuses, and full protection. No one touches you, no one threatens you. $3,000 a week, that's more than she made in 3 months at the diner, enough to disappear for real if ever needed." "And if I refuse?" asked Sienna. Gabriel stepped closer, stopping a few centimeters away, invading her personal space. She could smell sandalwood and tobacco from him. He looked down at her, his dark eyes intense. "You won't refuse," he said softly, "because you have debts, Sienna, not just rent. I know about the hospital bills for your mother in New Jersey from the nursing home. They call you 3 times a week demanding payment." Sienna's breath hitched. That was her secret, her leverage, her mother suffering early dementia, hidden in a pricey facility that cost a fortune. That was the only reason Sienna was still alive. She had to pay the bills. "You ran a background on me," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm protecting my investment," said Gabriel. "Work for me and the facility will be fully paid as long as she's alive." It was a deal with the devil. She knew it. He knew it. Sienna looked at Rocco, who watched her impassively, then back at Gabriel. This man was dangerous. He was a manipulator. He was a criminal. But he was offering her a lifeline. Sienna pocketed the pepper spray, took the black card from his hand. "What schedule?" she asked. Gabriel's grin returned, triumphant and predatory. "Sunset to sunrise, darling. Welcome to the family." The Onyx Lounge wasn't a club. It was a cathedral built for worshipping vice, located on the edge of the Seaport District, occupying the first floor and basement of a restored industrial warehouse. Walls were exposed brick-painted matte black, booths upholstered in velvet the color of dried blood, lighting dim enough to hide sins, bright enough to count money. Sienna adjusted the cuffs of her jacket. Gabriel hadn't lied about the wardrobe budget. He'd allocated funds, but she'd chosen her own armor, fitted black pants, silk blouse, and form-fitting jacket. She looked like a CEO, not a cocktail waitress. She needed that distinction in a place like this. If you look like staff, they treat you like furniture. It was her 4th night as floor manager. The learning curve was steep, not just memorizing faces of Boston's elite, city council members needing stiff drinks and fuzzy checks, union leaders needing private booths, and Santoro crime family captains to be treated with absolute deference. She stood at the host's stand, scanning the room, her eyes constantly moving, a habit ingrained since childhood, exits, aggressors, lines of sight. "You stand like a soldier," a voice boomed in her ear. Sienna didn't flinch. She turned slowly and found Gabriel standing beside her. Today he wore a tuxedo unbuttoned at the collar. He looked tired, but the intensity in his eyes hadn't faded. "I stand like someone who doesn't want to be knocked down," Sienna replied, turning her attention back to the room. "Table 6 needs Macallan refill, and the senator in booth 2 is getting handsy with the waitress. I'm cutting him off." Gabriel chuckled softly. "Senator Mitchell, good luck. He's been drinking here since my father ran the place. He thinks he owns the city." "He can own the city," Sienna said coldly, "but not the staff. Watch." She moved away from Gabriel, gliding through the crowd with smooth grace. Gabriel watched her, leaning against a column. She intrigued him. Most people he hired either feared him or tried to imitate him. Sienna was neither. She treated him like an annoying landlord. It was refreshing. He watched as she approached the senator's booth, the politician red from drink, his hand gripping the wrist of the young waitress named Chloe. Chloe looked scared. Sienna didn't make a scene, didn't yell. She just set a glass of water on the table with a sharp clack, the sound cutting through the senator's drunken fog. "Senator," Sienna said, lowering her voice, "your car is at the entrance." "I'm not done yet," mumbled the senator, not releasing Chloe. "Who are you?" Sienna leaned in, placed her hand on the table, shifting her weight forward. "I'm the woman who decides if those photos of you snorting coke in the bathroom 10 minutes ago end up in the paper tomorrow." The senator froze, his grip on Chloe's wrist loosened. There were no photos. Sienna hadn't even seen him go to the bathroom, but men like Senator Mitchell always had something to hide, and they always assumed they were being watched. It was a calculated, cold bluff. "Leave," whispered Sienna, smiling pleasantly for the room. The senator jumped up, tossing a handful of cash on the table, and practically ran to the exit. Sienna nodded to Chloe. "Take 10 in the break room. I'll cover your section." When she returned to her spot, Gabriel waited with a glass of champagne. "You bluff well," he noted with admiration. "Who said I was bluffing?" Sienna took the glass but didn't drink. "Do you have cameras in the bathrooms, Gabriel?" "I just assumed you record." Gabriel's face tensed slightly. "You're observant, a dangerous quality." "A necessary quality," she corrected. The peaceful atmosphere shattered at 11 p.m. The front doors burst open, and a group of 4 men entered. The air in the club changed instantly. Music didn't stop, conversations continued, but the temperature dropped. Santoro soldiers around the room tensed, hands reaching for jackets. The group was led by a man Sienna recognized from the dossier Gabriel made her study, Marco Vane, deputy head of the Moretti family, the Santoro's only real rivals in Boston. Marco was young, reckless, and loud, wearing a white suit that screamed for attention, and he had a reputation for violence, a man lacking Gabriel's strategic restraint. "Gabriel," Marco called, spreading his arms wide, "I heard you have a new dog guarding the door. Where is he?" He stepped from the shadows, his face an unreadable mask. "Marco, you're far from the North End. Lost?" "Just checking the competition," grinned Marco. He passed the host stand, completely ignoring Sienna, grabbed a vodka bottle from a passing tray, took a swig, and smashed the bottle on the floor. Glass shattered. Music stopped. "Oops," grinned Marco, slippery hands. Rocco stepped forward, his knuckles white. Gabriel raised a hand, stopping him. A fight here and now would draw police. Onyx Lounge was legal cover, blood on the floor bad for business. "Clean it up," ordered Marco, snapping his fingers toward Sienna. "Sweetie, get a broom." Sienna looked at the broken glass, then at Marco. The whole club watched. If she cleaned, Santoro's would look weak. If she refused, violence would erupt. Sienna approached the mess. She squatted down. Marco laughed, looking at Gabriel. "See, they all bend eventually." Sienna picked up a large jagged shard of glass. She stood slowly, holding it not like trash, holding it like a shank. She closed the distance between them in 2 steps. Before Marco could react, she was in his personal space. She took his hand, the one he'd snapped with, and placed the jagged glass in his palm, squeezed his fingers tight, not enough to cut deep but enough to prick the skin. Enough to promise pain. "You dropped this," whispered Sienna, her face inches from his, her eyes dead voids. "And in this house, we don't clean up after children. We call their mommies to come get them." Marco flinched. He tried to yank his hand away, but Sienna's grip was surprisingly iron. She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. "And Marco, the dilation of your pupils says you're on stimulants. Your pulse is visible at your neck. If you start a fight here, you'll be winded in 30 seconds. My bouncers will scrape you off the floor like gum." Leave. Marco wrenched his hand free. A single drop of blood beaded on his palm. He stared at Sienna, genuine shock in his eyes. He looked at Gabriel, who watched with a frighteningly calm smirk. "You're crazy," muttered Marco. He signaled his men. "Let's go. This place stinks of stale smoke." The door closed. Silence held for 3 seconds before the jazz band played again. Gabriel approached Sienna. She was wiping a drop of vodka from her jacket. "You provoked him," said Gabriel, and he wasn't angry, he was tense. "I controlled him," corrected Sienna. "He wanted a reaction. I brought him back to reality." "He's a killer, Sienna." "So are you," she parried, finally meeting his gaze. "I'm still standing here." Gabriel stepped closer, closing the distance, reached out. His thumb slid along her cheekbone. It was an intimate gesture, startling in its tenderness. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Really?" Sienna pulled away, breaking contact, her heart pounding against her ribs. No fear of Marco, from the electricity of Gabriel's touch. That's where the real danger was. "I'm just staff, Mr. Santoro," she said, her voice slightly shaky, "and I need to clean up the mess." She turned and walked to the bar, leaving Gabriel staring after her. He looked like a man who just found a diamond in a coal mine and feared he might crush it. 2 weeks after the Marco incident, Sienna earned odd respect among the staff. Bouncers nodded to her. Bartenders made her espresso unasked. She was becoming part of the ecosystem. But Sienna didn't let herself relax. Comfort is how you die. She spent nights managing the floor, days visiting her mother at Greenwood Moam River. The facility was beautiful, gardens, quiet music, nurses who actually smiled. Gabriel kept his word, bills paid. Her mother, former schoolteacher named Martha, didn't recognize Sienna most days, but she was safe. That's all that mattered. On a rainy Thursday, Sienna was in the back office of Onyx, checking liquor inventory. Door ajar, she heard voices in the hallway. "I'm telling you, I need more," whined a nervous voice. "Cops are sniffing around my apartment." "You got paid," replied a lower voice. Sienna recognized it. It was distinctively raspy. It belonged to Leo, one of Gabriel's low-level captains, the man who ran the docks. "You got paid for a job I didn't finish," countered the nervous voice. "And that waitress, she ruined everything. You said it'd be easy, just scare the old man, take the money, wait for the signal." Sienna froze. Her pen hovered over the ledger. Waitress, scare the old man. She stood silently, crept to the door crack, saw them. Leo leaning against the wall, smoking. Facing him the bug-eyed guy from Miller's Diner, the junkie robber, the one she'd told to leave. "You were supposed to wait until Santoro stood up," hissed Leo. "Plan was to shoot him in the crossfire of the botched robbery. You idiots ran because the girl scared you with a cigarette. She was creepy dude. She knew about the gun." "Shut up," growled Leo. "Here's another grand. Get out of town. If I see you again, I'll bury you up to the glasses on the 93rd Highway." The junkie grabbed the money and bolted to the back exit. Leo adjusted his jacket and walked back to the main club room. Sienna leaned against the desk, her breathing shallow and ragged. The robbery wasn't random. It was an assassination on Gabriel, and organized by his own man, Leo. If Leo wanted Gabriel dead, there was a traitor in the inner circle. If Sienna told Gabriel, who would he believe? The waitress is known a month or the captain he's known 10 years. She needed proof, or she needed to save him when the next attempt happened, because there would be a next attempt. "Grab your coat." Sienna looked up. Gabriel stood in the office doorway, looked impeccable in a navy suit but his eyes tired. "Where are we going?" asked Sienna, closing the ledger. "Close game," said Gabriel. "High-stakes poker, warehouse in Chelsea. I need you to serve drinks and watch. Your eyes are better than my bodyguards." Sienna's heart sank. Chelsea was Leo's turf. "Will Leo be there?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Leo's hosting," nodded Gabriel. "Why?" "No reason," lied Sienna. She grabbed her coat. She couldn't tell him yet, not without proof. Leo would deny everything, frame her as a liar, and she'd be dead. She had to go. She had to be the shield. She checked her purse, pepper spray canister there. Instead she slipped in a folding tactical knife bought at a military surplus store, little but something. The ride to Chelsea was tense. Rain lashed the armored windows. Rocco drove. Gabriel sat beside Sienna, reading emails on his phone. "You're quiet today," said Gabriel, glancing at her. "Just thinking," said Sienna. "About loyalty," she added. "That's the only currency," said Gabriel, setting down the phone. "Everything else is just paper." They arrived at the warehouse. It was huge, dimly lit, single poker table in the center under a heavy industrial lamp, the rest in shadow. Leo was there, grinning, holding a bourbon bottle. At the table sat 4 more men, bosses, rivals, high rollers. "Boss," grinned Leo, spreading his arms, "glad you made it." "Rocco, you stay at the door, don't want to spook the guests." Rocco grunted and positioned at the entrance, 30 feet away. Gabriel sat at the table head. Sienna took a spot just behind him, holding a silver tray of crystal glasses. Game started, mood jovial, but Sienna felt tension emanating from the shadows. She scanned the shadows, warehouse full of shipping containers, too many blind spots. Leo was nervous, constantly checking his watch, constantly glancing at the metal rafters above them. Sienna poured bourbon for a man named Sal. Leaning in, she whispered to Gabriel, pretending to ask, "Trajectory, check rafters." She exhaled barely moving lips, "At 3 o'clock." Gabriel didn't look up, didn't flinch, took his cards. "Pass," he said loudly, tossing his hand. He reached for his glass, and in the reflection of the amber liquid saw it, metal glint in the dark rafters, sniper scope. At that moment Leo stepped back from the table. "Got a piss, deal without me." "Leo," said Gabriel, his voice calm but carrying the weight of thunderclaps, "sit down." Leo froze. "What?" "I said sit." "Drop the tray," yelled Sienna. She didn't wait, grabbed Gabriel by the jacket collar and yanked him back with the chair. Bang! Bullet slammed into the poker table exactly where Gabriel's chest had been a second ago. Splinters flew. "Ambush!" roared Rocco from the door, drawing his weapon. Chaos erupted. Other players flipped the table, taking cover behind it. Sienna and Gabriel crashed onto the concrete floor, Gabriel shielding her for a split second before rolling to cover behind a stack of crates. "Sniper up top," yelled Gabriel to Rocco. New shot ricocheted off the concrete floor beside them. It wasn't just the sniper, shooters emerging from walls and shipping containers. "Leo set you up," yelled Sienna through the gunfire. She was pressed to Gabriel's side. "I overheard him talking to the robber from the diner. It was an inside job." Gabriel looked at her, eyes blazing with a mix of rage and realization. He drew a pistol from his waist holster, sleek Beretta. "Stay down," he ordered. "No," said Sienna. She saw a shooter approaching from the left. Gabriel focused on sniper. Sienna didn't think, acted on instinct honed from a lifetime watching her father clean guns, a lifetime being told hesitation is death. She lunged forward, sliding across the floor to where a fallen bodyguard had dropped his weapon, grabbed the gun, Glock 19. The shooter raised his rifle at Gabriel's unprotected back. Sienna fired. 2 shots, center mass. The shooter fell. Gabriel spun, raising his pistol, shocked to see Sienna with smoking gun, her stance perfect, hands steady. "Told you," said Sienna, her voice devoid of emotion, eyes scanning for the next target. "I handle safeties." "Rocco, suppression fire," yelled Gabriel, snapping back to reality. He grabbed Sienna's hand, moving to exit on 3, 1, 2, 3. They ran, bullets chewing the floor behind them. Rocco laid down heavy fire from an automatic he'd pulled from under his coat, covering them. They burst through a side door into pouring rain, SUV waiting. They dove in. "Go, go, go," yelled Gabriel. Tires squealed and the armored vehicle tore away from the warehouse, leaving the ambush behind. In the vehicle, silence was deafening. Sienna sat shaking from adrenaline, and it overwhelmed her. She dropped the pistol on the floor mat, looked at her hands. They were covered in grease dust. Gabriel stared at her, stared at the pistol, stared at her face. "You killed him," said Gabriel quietly. "He was going to shoot you in the back," whispered Sienna, nausea rising. Gabriel reached out, took her trembling palms in his, grip strong, possessive, desperate. "You saved my life," he said, "twice." "About Leo," Gabriel's voice turned icy. "Leo is dead. But you," he pulled her closer, the barrier between boss and employee, between mafioso and civilian shattered by the shot. "You're not just a waitress, Sienna," murmured Gabriel, eyes searching hers. "Who taught you to shoot like that?" Sienna looked away, staring at blurred city lights, tears stinging eyes. "My father," she confessed, voice barely audible. "Detective Frank Brooks, Narcotics Division, before he went to prison, before he died." Gabriel tensed. He knew the name. Frank Brooks was a legend, corrupt cop who played both sides of the law and paid for it in full. "Your father was a rat," said Gabriel, realization washing over him. "My father was a survivor," snapped Sienna, yanking her hands away, "until he stopped being one. And he taught me the only person coming to save you is yourself." Gabriel looked at her again. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. He saw the same shattered shards in a soul that existed in his. "You're wrong," said Gabriel, reaching out again, this time cupping her chin, forcing her to look at him. "Now you're with me, Sienna. Your family, and no one touches my family." He leaned in, lips inches from hers. Adrenaline, fear, violence, all fused into magnetic pull neither could resist. But before their lips touched, Rocco yelled from the front seat, "Boss, we have a tail, 2 cars, they're closing." The SUV lurched hard as a heavy sedan rammed their rear bumper. Sienna was thrown into Gabriel's chest. The war wasn't over, it had just begun. The armored SUV turned into a wreck of twisted metal and shattered glass. It stood smoking in the ditch off the 93rd highway exit, rain hissing on the hot engine block. Minutes earlier, the pursuing sedan had clipped their rear axle, sending the vehicle into uncontrollable spins. Rocco, with a bleeding gash on his forehead but ferociously alive, inserted a fresh magazine into his automatic. "Boss, to the exit," roared Rocco, kicking the door open with his foot. "Warehouse 4 has a spare car, go, I'll hold them here." Rocco began Gabriel, but the bodyguard was already firing into the darkness, drawing the killer group's attention to himself. Now 20 minutes later, silence was absolute. Gabriel drove an inconspicuous rusted Ford Taurus emergency car north to the New Hampshire border, knuckles white on the wheel. Beside him, Sienna stared out the window at the rushing black forest, hands still trembling, but she didn't cry, a defense mechanism well known from nights when father didn't come home. "You're bleeding," said Sienna, her voice cutting through the heater's hum. Gabriel looked down, dark stains spreading on his left shirt shoulder, grazing wound from a bullet during the warehouse escape. "Nonsense," he grunted. "It's not nonsense, pull over." "We can't stop. Leo knows city points we need to get to the lake house." They drove another 2 hours in silence until city lights became distant memory, replaced by darkness and wilderness. The lake house wasn't a cottage, it was a fortress of glass and would hidden at the end of a 5-kilometer dirt road. Gabriel killed the engine, the forest silence louder than the gunfire. "Inside," ordered he, voice strained from pain. Inside it was cold. Gabriel entered a code on a panel. Lights flickered, revealing modern minimalist living room with fireplace. He went straight to the bar, poured a glass of whiskey and collapsed on the leather sofa. Sienna didn't sit, went to the kitchen, found first aid kit under the sink standard place, returned. She took the whiskey from his hand, took a swig herself to steady nerves, set the glass down. "Shirt off," she ordered. Gabriel looked at her, face pale, sweat on brow, adrenaline fading, pain rolling in. He unbuttoned the ruined shirt, exposing torso, a map of violence, old scars, knife wounds, burns, fresh wound on shoulder, angry red but not deep. "Needs cleaning," said Sienna, soaking gauze pad in antiseptic. "It'll burn." "Do it." She pressed the pad to the wound. Gabriel hissed, hand clenching armrest so leather creaked. Sienna worked efficiently, clinically precise, cleaned blood, applied butterfly strips, bandaged. When done, she didn't pull away, stood between his knees, hands on his bare chest, feeling heavy thump of his heart. "You should have left me in the diner," whispered Sienna. Gabriel looked up at her, eyes dark pools of fatigue and tension. "If I'd left you in the diner, you'd be dead. Leo would tie up loose ends." "I was dead anyway," said Sienna, voice breaking. "I've been dead 3 years since Dad went to prison, since Mom forgot my name. I was just waiting." "And now?" asked Gabriel, reaching out, cupping her nape, pulling her face to his. "Now I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm awake." Gabriel's thumb stroked her cheek. "You didn't just wake up, Sienna. You're fire. I saw you today, you didn't hesitate, you didn't freeze, you saved me." "I killed a man, Gabriel." "You saved me," he repeated, emphasizing the word. "In my world, that's the only morality that exists, us versus them." The distance between them evaporated. Gabriel pulled her to him, this time no interruption. His lips met hers with hunger born of death's proximity. It wasn't gentle, it was desperate, possessive mix of violence and loyalty. Sienna returned the kiss, fingers tangling in his dark hair. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like an invisible waitress. She felt powerful, she felt seen. Outside, wind in the pines inside the fire was just starting to blaze, casting long dancing shadows on the walls. They remained wrapped around each other, two broken people finding jagged shards that fit together. "Sienna," murmured Gabriel against her skin later when the fire crackled, "if we survive this, you know, there's no going back, no more Miller's diner, no shadows." "I know," she said, laying her head on his good shoulder. "I don't want to go back." "Good," said Gabriel, his voice hardening to steel resolve, "because tomorrow we go back to Boston and burn Leo's world to the ground." Morning sun hit the lake with blinding glare by the time Sienna woke. Gabriel was dressed in black, checking his Beretta's magazine. "I set a meeting," said Gabriel, voice deadly despite the wound. "Tonight, Onyx Lounge. I invited the heads of 5 families and Leo." "Leo won't come," countered Sienna. "He knows he missed." "He will," said Gabriel with grim smile, "because I told him I'm surrendering. I told him I'm stepping down, giving up my territory." Onyx Lounge transformed, tables pushed aside, leaving large open circle where heads of New England crime family Saturday. She stood at the bar in elegant black dress, tactical knife strapped to thigh under silk. She scanned the room. Leo paced, looking smug. In the central chair sat Salvatore Samara's uncle, oldest, most respected Don White Carnation in lapel. "Enough nonsense," Gabriel interrupted him. "Procedure, just sign the papers. Now I'm family." "No." "No," spoke the uncle, his voice raspy. He stood slowly. "I say," continued Sal, "a dog that bites its master needs to be put down." Leo adjusted his jacket. Sienna saw a bright red handkerchief in his pocket. She recalled her father's old case files, white piece, red war. Sal hadn't come to mediate. He was the architect. He'd used Leo to weaken Gabriel. Now he'd destroy both and take the city. 2 bartenders suddenly pulled shotguns from under the counter. Gabriel not one. Sienna screamed. She didn't run. She grabbed a bottle of strong rum and hurled it at the nearest light fixture. Lamp shattered, sparks ignited, alcohol fireball knocked out. Club's main breaker room plunged into darkness, lit only by flashing red emergency lights. To the floor roared Gabriel. Chaos erupted. Shots flashed like lightning in the melee. Leo's people turned on Sal's, but Sal's strike team proved stronger. Sienna crawled across glass-strewn floor in red light. She saw Leo standing over fallen bodyguard, gun pointed straight at her. "Smart girl," grinned he, demonic in red light. "Too smart." "No," screamed Gabriel. He didn't shoot. He lunged into the path. Bullet went off, force through Gabriel back. He fell heavy to the floor. Gabriel. Sienna's scream tore her throat. She looked at Leo. He was adjusting aim for control shot. Shotgun lay on floor 1.5 meters away, balanced by wounded bartender. Sienna Dove rolled, grabbed cold steel, racked the slide. Boom. Charge hit Leo in chest, lifting him off floor, throwing him back into his velvet chair. Silence returned to the room, broken only by alarm's wail. Sienna rushed to Gabriel. He clutched side, blood oozing through fingers. "Gabriel," she pressed hands to his wound. "Hold on." He coughed wet rattles, but painful smile touched his lips. "You really hate bad tippers," he croaked. Sienna laughed, tears streaming. "Hold on." I triggered the alarm. "Help's coming." Gabriel squeezed her hand, grip weak but possessive. "I'm not going anywhere, Sienna. We have more to do." 6 months later, the bell on Miller's diner door jingled. It was 2 a.m. Tuesday rain drumming window panes just like that fateful night. "Mr." Miller looked up, expecting a drunk or lost tourist. Instead he froze. A woman entered wearing perfectly tailored cream-trenched diamond stud earrings, heels clicking authoritatively on linoleum. It was Sienna, but not the waitress he'd fired. This Sienna held terrifying elegance, haircut to sharp, fashionable bob, eyes once tired, dull, now sharp, attentive. Behind her, Gabriel Santoro moved with light, limp souvenir from Bullet. He took for her but looked as authoritative as ever. Rocco stood at entrance, arms crossed, blocking door. "Sigh," stammered Mr. Miller, wiping sweat from brow. "I heard some crazy things." "No." Sienna approached counter, didn't look down, looked him in eyes. "Hello, Mr. Miller." "We are closing soon," said Miller, trembling voice. "And about your firing, insurance company forced me." "Actually," said Gabriel, standing beside Sienna, voice low, rumble. "You are under new management." He laid folded document on counter. "I bought this building, Miller, whole block, and credit on your home." Miller paled. "Please, Mr. Santoro." "He knows," said Sienna, softly, gloved hand on counter. "I'm not here for revenge, Miller. I'm here for pie." Miller blinked. "Pie?" "Cherry pie and 2 black coffees." They sat in booth number for the very one Gabriel occupied the night they met. "Diner empty except them." "Miss it?" asked Gabriel, watching her sip bitter coffee. "The coffee." "God, no," laughed Sienna, "but here I stop hiding." Gabriel reached across table, took her palm, thumb tracing platinum ring on her finger. "City's quiet with Leo gone and 5 families under us. We have peace." "You did good work, Sienna." It was true. Last 6 months Sienna became brains to Gabriel's muscle streets, knew her not as waitress but last Signora the lady. She ran books, vetted recruits, stopped violence with diplomacy before it started. Door opened again. Young guy entered, nervous, hood up, hands pocketed, headed straight to counter. "Give the money," yelled guy, pulling rusted, jagged kitchen knife on Miller. Sienna stopped drinking coffee, watched tremor in guy's hands. "He's panicking now," said Sienna calmly to Gabriel. "Want me to handle?" asked Gabriel, reaching for jacket. "No," said Sienna, "drink your coffee." She stood, heels clicking rhythmically as she approached counter. "Put that away," she commanded. Guy turned grinned seeing her sit down. Auntie, or I'll cut you. Sienna didn't flinch, stepped closer, invading his space. That's a serrated bread knife, she said, bored tone awful for stabbing it'll snag in coat fabric, and your stance too wide you'll lose balance. Guy looked confused. What I'm saying, Sienna lowered voice to dangerous whisper, you're making a mistake that'll cost you the rest of your life. She nodded to far booth. Guy looked, saw Gabriel Santoro face from news face nightmares were woven from. Gabriel just watched sipping coffee looking at Guy like dead insect. Guy's face went white, dropped knife, it clattered to floor. I didn't know, he stammered. Leave. Sienna pointed to door. Find a job. If I see you in this neighborhood again, I won't be so polite. Guy vanished into rainy night faster than anyone Sienna ever saw. Sienna picked up knife with napkin laid on counter, put this in, lost, and found Miller. She returned to booth, sat Gabriel smiling, real smile full of love and pride. You didn't even use a cigarette this time, he noted. I quit. Sienna leaned across table, kissed him soft long kiss, tasting victory, but at least now I hold the gun. She looked out window at rain-washed Boston streets. Waitress serving coffee in shadows gone. Queen took a throne. Sienna Brooks went from waiting tables to running underworld, proving sometimes most dangerous person in room isn't one with gun but one not afraid to use it. Gabriel Santoro found partner who didn't just stand behind him but beside him when world burned. What do you think about the ending? Did Sienna make the right choice? Write in comments. Did you like this mafia romantic saga? Please hit like, it helps the channel a lot, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.